Hey Reddit. When did your something's not right here gut feeling ever save you? Wife called me while I was at work. Just to say she was home from her night shift and planning to go to bed. She had worked night shift for years and never called me just to say she was home and going to bed before. She also sounded weirdly detached on the call. I asked her if she was okay. She said yes, just really sleepy. I got a weird feeling and told her I was going to leave work and come home. She told me I didn't need to. I said then I left work and rushed home anyway. Found a suicide note taped to the garage door. I got to her in time. Rushed her to the ER. And got her the help she needed. A week of inpatient psych. Followed by changes to medications and doctors. This was about 5 months ago. And she is so much better now. Damn. Give your wife a hug from me. It flippin' sucks to feel that way. So glad you were able to help her. I used to just drive around country roads when I would feel stressed out or sad as a way to just get away and listen to music. One evening I was driving with my best friend in the car and we're on a gravel road that has a huge hill. We were driving towards the sunset but it was winter and the light was fading fast. As the car started down the hill I had this moment where I thought to myself my brights should be on and I flicked them on and at the bottom of the super steep hill stood 6 deer on the road. I slammed on the brakes and the car turned sideways and skidded to a stop like 4 feet from the deer. Those stupid deer didn't even move. They just stared into the passenger side of my car and my best friend pointed at them and said, "Hey. Deer." The car was fine. We were fine. And Bambi was all good. I don't drive around like that anymore. My mom and her entire family were saved from dying from carbon monoxide poisoning by her dad. He left for work. Got a weird feeling and drove back home. Everyone in the house was unconscious. And he had to drag or carry them all outside one by one. They all survived. My sister since she was about 5 was always obsessed with tsunamis and would always ask my dad every night before she went to sleep if there would be a tsunami. That night we lived on a beach. About 5 years later when our family was holidaying in Samoa an earthquake struck at about 6 a.m. It was only a dull low rumble but went on for over a minute. Everyone at the resort woke up and went outside for a few minutes then went back to bed. My sister, having been obsessed with tsunamis, ran down to look at the water and noticed the sea going out and saved a lot of lives including my own. There was about a minute from her noticing till the tsunami hit. Luckily for us there was a cliff right behind the resort, if not a lot more people would have been killed. So something like a gut feeling 5 years in the making. Not me but my science teacher. When she was a teenager she was standing near some lights at a pedestrian crossing with her and her friend. Very chill, but out of nowhere she had this gut feeling that both of them had to move. They moved just a couple meters away and the next moment a car had hit another car and had hit one of the street electricity utility poles and it had fell and exploded. Minor explosion enough distance away that it didn't hurt the girls exactly where they were. One of the wires had also snapped and hit it exactly where they were standing as well. They basically were in a scene of car wreckage and snapped wires and electricity explosions and the pole collapse. Just real insane. If the pole had missed them, the wire would have hit them, and if not that, then most likely the cars. That gut feeling of moving away saved both of them. I remember this story so clearly from high school science class because it was such a WTF. Pity I only paid attention to these things and not actually science, hee. I went to hospital with shortness of breath and my heart racing. They did a chest x-ray, blood test for blood clots, ECG, and a few other tests, but all came back normal. After observing me overnight everything still looked good. Oxygen saturation was perfect. My heart rate was still a bit elevated but nothing too crazy. and it seemed that it was likely leftover symptoms from a bad virus that I'd had a week or so earlier. The ER doctor asks me how I would feel if they sent me home, and I just had a bad feeling about it all. I told him as such, and that I had no real basis for it except that I just felt off about it. He said, fair enough. Let's try one more test, and if that comes back negative, then we'll send you up to general medicine and see if they can track something down. That test was a VQ scan that found, despite all other tests showing no results for blood clots. I actually had a whole bunch of them in both lungs. I ended up with a diagnosis of unprovoked bilateral pulmonary embolisms and am on blood thinners for life. Super grateful both for the bad feeling and the ER doctor who was willing to listen to it. EMT here. I was taught if a patient tells you they think something is wrong or they think they are going to die, you need to listen to them. When I was about 10 years old, I was going to the beach with my older sister, her friends and their parents. They had a van that was open in the back, think white creepy van. No seats. The other friends of my sister's friends took turns sitting on the father's lap when he asked if they wanted to steer the van. He then asked me, and my gut said no. This man is creepy as f***. The look in his eyes sent shivers down my spine. Once we got to the beach, I forgot all about creepy guy and focused on fun. Fast forward several months later. My sister's friends asked if my sister wanted to sleep over. She refused, and my mom and I were baffled as to why she didn't want to go. We kept encouraging her to. Soon she broke down in tears and told us that one night their father had molested her. The van incident and feelings came flying back to me. I wish I had not forgotten my gut feeling and shared it with my mother and sister before anything happened to my sister. Sometimes I still feel guilty over it. That was over 30 years ago. I don't remember what happened to the guy. I just remember a state vehicle at my house a lot afterwards. No one ever talked about it again, and I never asked. I was learning violin when I was about 10 from an instructor at my local music shop. I got the weirdest feeling from him, even though he didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I wanted to vomit every time I looked at him. Especially his hands. After 4 lessons I told my parents that I had a terrible feeling about him and I never wanted to go back. Luckily, they listened and didn't make me ever go to him again. A few years later he was arrested for molesting multiple of his students. I have no idea how I knew something was off. He never did or said anything, but I just felt it. I'm just glad your parents listened. Creds to my dad for this one. Back in 2011, my dad and I was driving down the country for New Year's Eve. Suddenly he goes quiet. Kind of starts breathing slow and steady. And tells me to look up the road. He was so calm and focused. I look up and see a car spinning in the middle of the freeway, ramping up speed and knocking cars off the road. This is Scandinavia. Winter. Pretty much on ice. I imagine the driver of that car hoping. Just hoping. So my dad proceeds to accelerate towards the guy spinning. Which didn't even occur to me was weird. He was just so calm. Which made me calm. The car hits us on my dad's side. Half a second earlier my dad turned slightly right. Which was just enough for the car to push us out of the road and completely safe into a snow hill. I realized a bit later that a lamppost on that same side we flew off to had crushed the back right side of our car. Just missing the angle that would have hit me. Years later I realized the reason my dad sped up the vehicle. Getting hit by that car was a question of when. Not if. And if he had not accelerated, that lamppost would have been my death. After that occurrence my pulse always drops in pressure situations. I woke up from a deep sleep at like 2 a.m. during a winter storm. Something wasn't right. I immediately went looking for my senior dog and couldn't find her anywhere in the house. My roommates had a tendency to let her out for a walk and forget about her. Closing the door, I ran to the front of the house and found her laying on the welcome mat. She was hardly breathing and covered in snow. She had been outside alone for at the very least 5 hours. I moved out shortly after. Hey Reddit.